but I knew instinctively that the only person that could make it better was me, and I could lie there for as long as I wanted and say it's not fair, I don't want to have to do this, but then I'm ruining my own life.
Harriet Barnsley survived a serious road traffic collision in 2014 when she was 21. She was hit as a pedestrian by a car travelling at 101 miles an hour. She woke from a month-long coma to learn that her best friend had been killed at the scene. Harriet lives with a long list of injuries. She's physically disabled and suffered a traumatic brain injury in the collision, going on to develop bipolar as a result. She's now writing a memoir, having graduated her degree in philosophy, and she volunteers for a number of mental health and disability charities and is training to be a counsellor. Harriet, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Harriet, as with all of my guests, I wanted to start with a little run through of what your teenage years were like.
That's a broad question. What were my teenage years like? Hard.
Okay. I mean, teenage years are hard, but was there anything in particular that was hard for you?
Well, so I was really badly bullied in primary school, and it kind of carried on in secondary school, and it was just every single day going to a school where I went where people weren't exactly nice to me for 5 years was kind of soul destroying.
Yeah, that's a lot. So I'm guessing school years were just not happy for you at all.
School years, no, I was okay. I learned very fast to be self-sufficient, and I think one of the main problems was I was a bit of a teacher's pet. I wanted to do my work well, and I was quietly confident, so I wouldn't kind of go along with what everyone else was saying, or just conform, and that caused a lot of problems because people, the tough ones don't like it when you don't do what they say.
Well, because you weren't kind of cowering under their spell, you were just getting on with life and doing well.
Yeah.
That people don't. Yeah, no, you're right. Oh God.
I mean, I don't know if it's changed, but I like to think it's changed. But school was very hard for just the people side. The work was fine. I got good grades. The socialising and having to be around people and all the different dilemmas and problems and arguments was just. And I went to a girls' school for secondary, which was. I don't know if that's easier or harder, not having boys there.
Yeah, both probably.
Yeah.
Easier in some ways, harder in others. But yeah, I mean, girls do seem to go through typical age-related stuff that is unfathomable once you're out the other side. And even those girls that are perpetrators of it will come out the other side and often say, I cannot believe I was like that. I don't know why. I've had these conversations with friends of mine who've been those girls.
Yeah, I can't believe, having come out of it, that the real world, the adult world, isn't like that, and I don't have to have this stress all the time. And it's not like people are their own people, and we're not. No one, like, unless you hang out in big groups of people. There's a bit of I struggle with big groups of people, but we're all kind of just getting on with it and not trying to ruin each other's lives anymore. It's such a relief.
God, just that phrase you said, not trying to ruin each other's lives anymore. It can feel like that in school sometimes, can't it? It's so sad. Did you have any friends?
Yeah. So my closest friend was my friend that was killed next to me in the car crash, which was, she was my oldest friend. I got on with people. I have a few friends from school, but I didn't do, so I had friends from like different cliques, but I didn't have one big group that I was happy in. And that's kind of how it feels in life now. I don't have one big group. I just have a few different people, and it kind of works better for me.
I feel like that's what most people have. You narrow things down. I think when we're in school as girls, it can feel important to be part of a big gang where it's all about finding your tribe, isn't it? You'll know if you're doing. I'm also doing counselling training at the moment, and there's a real biological urge to find a tribe where you fit and are accepted, so that you're safe, I suppose. But in reality, in a school situation, there's nothing safe about those popular tribes. And I think the reason everyone settles down once we're all adults is because those people who were doing the bullying, who were really cliquey, are more able to acknowledge that they've got vulnerabilities as well. I think back in school, you just want to be invulnerable as far as everyone else in the room's
Mm.
concerned. You don't want any judgment or weakness to show.
It's funny. It was yesterday I was thinking, like, I've got a few. My friendships have changed a lot over the years, and I've got like friends from school that I'm kind of drifted away from, and it feels quite painful to not. I've thought of, like, I've got a few friends from uni, and they have their groups that they have from school still that they're held on to, and I'm weirdly jealous of that. Like,
Mm.
that they just have, like, someone, because one of my closest friends died, and we had a few people we got on with, but I don't have anyone to kind of be like, oh, school days. I could, yeah.
Right, to reminisce, and that shared connection from history.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's the point. The group at school of the people that all, like, I don't know, the ones that get on fine and seem to do well. It's always enviable. I don't know how to not envy that, even though I don't. I know it didn't work like that, and really they had their own struggles. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. And actually, my counselling tutor did an exercise with us a couple of weeks ago and it was based on horoscopes, and he'd printed out what for all of us felt like a personalised character description for our horoscope. And he asked us how much we identified, and all of us identified with our own write-up at the top end of the scale. And that's when he said, it's exactly the same piece of paper that you've all got. It says the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I found it really comforting that actually all of us think we're good at some things, don't think we're so good at others, feel a bit vulnerable. That was the bit that really, feel like we're getting things wrong. We all feel the same. It's just how much we show it to the world.
Yeah, no, that is really comforting.
Yeah. So is it okay if I ask you to, and do say anything that I ask you in this podcast, you don't have to answer, but is it okay to ask you a bit about your friendship? Who was your friend?
My friend was Rebecca McManus, and we met in primary school in the first year nursery, so at age 5.
Wow.
And we just got on. Everyone was really horrible to me in primary school. It was quite a really bad time in my life. My mum wanted to get involved, and but obviously you can't get involved in what, I don't know. But Becky was always, we always got on, and we just hung out and had sleepovers all the time. Went birthday bowling, and her birthday was close to mine in January, so we'd kind of celebrate together, and just then got the bus to school every single day in secondary school, and went to different schools after that, but kept in contact and would have long phone calls, and like hour-long phone calls, and then she was just always a constant.
I feel like I'm probably being a bit counsely here, but I feel like when you said she was always a constant, there was something there that, like, what did it mean to you to have her friendship?
Well, no, it's just that it was there regardless. So no matter how much we kept in contact, or how much we drifted, or were busy with our lives, we still would pick up at the exact same place every single time we hung out. It's hard to find that.
It really is. As you were describing it, I was thinking about a friendship that I still have actually now. We didn't meet until we were 14, but she said something recently that resonated along the lines of what you just said. She's the only person now linked to. She's the only person that knows the me of that age, because all my other friends have come since then. So we have that kind of secret club of two, where we remember the school, we remember the people, we remember the people around, because we don't socialize with our. I mean, I am still in contact with other people from school, but they're not close friends.
Yeah.
That must be a really difficult thing to miss now, having had that.
It took. So I woke up from the coma and didn't learn for a while that Becky had been with me and that she died. But it's been almost 10 years now, and the thing I've learned about grief is that, like, you know, time, unfortunately, does make it easier to bear. So I've just kind of got on with it. I've been trying to find a person to kind of, like, subconsciously or unconsciously, trying to find a person to fill the gap, and I've sort of managed to do that on you know, you've heard of Bumble, the dating site.
Yeah.
Bumble has a section called Bumble BFF, which is to find friends, not dates.
Oh, right. Oh, what a great idea.
Like, it feels a bit weird swiping on people being like, will they be my friend? Or will we get on? But you write your shared interests, like if you want to meet and do yoga or meet for coffee shops or whatever.
Yeah.
And I met someone last year, and she's also had we kind of sat there when we first met, and like we did an exercise class first, and then we went for coffee and we sat and shared like our stories of our lives and why we're on the app and what we're trying to find, and it was beautiful. And then we've kind of been hanging out every week or two for like since we met like half a year ago.
Oh, amazing.
I'm seeing her on Sunday. It's just a beautiful acceptance and support, and it's really nice. And unfortunately, she's moved back. She went to Australia and got married for 6 years and then moved back and hasn't got any friends here. So I'm like her one friend. But we're also like, yeah, no, it's just really beautiful.
I think it's really important to have at least one person with whom you can show up kind of in all your glory, with all your vulnerabilities, and just be exactly who you are and know that they're doing the same thing.
I agree.
I don't think it happens for most people, actually. I'm not sure that a lot of people really have that. So I'm really pleased you've managed to find that again.
Yeah, I'm nervous that it'll go away, but that's, I suppose, just like linked to, but she's like trying to assure me that she'll be staying in Birmingham for the foreseeable.
Yeah, well, there's the vulnerability again, isn't it? Of when we have someone like that in our life, when we have that lovely connection, it's a risk, isn't it? Because there's a risk of loss. We just have to learn to be okay with that.
Well, especially with like what happened to me, it's kind of how I'm a lot more open about death, and kind of just like I've had quite a few people since die or have taken their own lives, and it's kind of become more. And also, I'm kind of I focus on it more. I don't know, so I'm just I'm sat there waiting for everyone to kind of die, but in a kind of accepting way. It's I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's a fact of life, as they say, isn't it? Okay, is it okay if we go back to the day that the accident happened and what happened to you? Can you describe a bit about what was happening that day for you? Where were you going?
So I had just come back from completing my degree in philosophy at Reading University and came back to my family's home. This is all what I've worked out because I don't remember the day or the weeks before, thanks to the brain injury or trauma. But so I met Becky at my house, her parents' house, and we walked through our local park and stood in a bus stop waiting to go to the centre of Birmingham to go to a friend's hen party where we were both due to be bridesmaids for the wedding.
Right.
And then I woke up a month later from a coma to learn what had happened.
Right.
And you want to know, so, and what had happened was 2 cars were drunk racing on Saturday night. It was about 7:30 at night, down a 40-mile-an-hour road.
Wow.
One lost control and smashed into the bus stop that we were stood at, and then we were thrown about 50 metres into the park behind the bus stop. Beck was killed instantly, and I was thrown into a coma.
Wow.
Mm.
I'm so sorry that happened. That never feels an effective enough phrase.
Yeah.
It's absolutely horrific.
Yeah, there are no words. I couldn't comprehend it for ages. So.
So the way you described it, it sounds like all you know from your own experience rather than from the facts that other people can tell you is that you had gone through the park with Becky to the bus stop, and the next thing you woke up in a hospital. So you have no recollection of anything that happened.
Well, I woke up in a hospital from a month-long coma where my Glasgow coma scale was about 3, which is the lowest. It's the lowest level of unconsciousness you can be without being dead. We're all like Glasgow coma scale. I think we're the maximum number 13 or 15. We're you and me are like the top, and so I was the closest to being dead.
Right,
brain dead. Woke up, didn't know. Couldn't remember anything, so I didn't know where I was, how old I was, what I'd been doing, that I'd been with Becky, that I'd been at uni. I forgot. I did remember, but I woke up and felt like I was kind of just in this weird simulation with these people pretending to be like nurses.
Right, that must have been so confusing.
I had like. The brain injury was a subarachnoid hemorrhage, which is a brain bleed, brain bruise. That's a stroke of the brain. So I just kept falling in and out of consciousness for a long, long time. So I didn't really have the energy to work out what was going on. And then eventually I turned and my head, I couldn't move any part of my body, but eventually I looked to the left and saw my mom sitting there and just trusted that if my mom was there, that what was happening was real and that I was fine.
And how long were you in hospital for?
6 months, which was significantly shorter than they predicted because I worked really, really, really hard physically to get out of the rehabilitating hospital and the second one as fast as possible. It was horrible. But
right.
And also I've always been athletic and sporty. Like I was like, this is the one thing I can do is I can't control what's happening, but I can get my body stronger.
Okay, yeah, so you work quite hard. Do you have any memory of how it felt when you started to learn about what had happened and that Becky had died?
Well, like I'd had messages from all of my friends because I'd just come back from doing a 4-month term abroad in Canada. And like I'd just finished university, so I had friends all over the world at this point, and I had all of them got in contact, like checking in, and Becky never did. And I kind of had a low level thinking. I was like, maybe she's at university and she's busy, like enjoying the last bit of her university. But like kind of that had a sneaking, like I was like, it's strange that she's not spoke to me. So like when my mom told me, it kind of made sense. But like so I just cried a lot.
Understandably. I don't really know where to go, whether to go down the physical recovery route because I'm interested in hearing about that, or whether to stick with how it all felt emotionally. I think as this is a mental health podcast, I'd like to ask you if you're able to say a little bit about how you must have felt very fragile emotionally. How did you start to... Well, how did you feel throughout all of that time when you were in hospital?
Okay, I can tell I can focus on the mental health side of it. I just got on with it. I lay there, and my mom was a paediatric nurse at the time, and that helped a lot. My sister was born physically disabled, learning difficulties, lots of things. So we kind of, and stone cold deaf. So we already kind of knew the disabled world, and like
Mm.
we were a tight unit as a family. So we just, and my parents had met through running. So like if you're like athletic, like people that are very into exercise and stuff, are kind of like, that it's discipline, and we're just like driven. I don't know, like it's just kind of, so we just had the confidence, and my dad was just like confident in me that I'd be able to get better.
Yeah.
It was a lot slower, and than you'd ever expect. It wasn't a case of waking up and being like, oh, like at first we thought I could get back to normal. And then
Right.
like after a while, 'cause I've got brain injury, chronic fatigue for the rest of my life. So I'll never be
Right.
able to do what I did. But we just support, like what really helped was particularly was like how my mom, like I broke the news and how my mom handled it in terms of, they were like, you can do this, come on, rather than being really like really upset at me. Like they didn't show how hard it was for them, like going home every
Right.
night and dealing with it, which is one thing that I think my mom, as a pediatric nurse, like, so when I would like hurt myself as a child, she'd say, come on, get up, and I'd be there, I'm like, no. Like other people's moms say, oh, poor you, like, I want some sympathy, but sympathy doesn't help you get better, and it makes you wallow in. So that's what they did. I didn't talk to me and say, oh, this is horrible, like I feel so bad for you, we have to protect you forever, it's not fair. They were just like, you can do this. And that was really important.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it sounds like they'd embedded some resilience in you already before this had even happened as a child. And yeah, there's a really fine balance, isn't there, between empathy and understanding that you're going through something incredibly difficult, and motivating you to keep going and having faith and showing you that they trust that you can get better. It's quite a tricky line for a parent to tread, I think.
If I was ever going to be a parent, it'd like really put the fact that my mom, like, as like I idolized my mom, like it was the best mom that I could possibly imagine. I can't imagine being able to keep up to the standards. Like just like all of her reactions to me throughout my life were just exactly what I needed. I don't know how. Like, and like when I turned 18 and started going out clubbing and like my dad really hated it, and my mom was worried, like lying awake, worried about me. She'd never like say like, oh, don't go out. She'd let me like, become a person and everything.
Oh, that whole becoming a person, letting you become a person. My God, that's really profound, because that's the sort of thing that
It's really hard.
I think parents of teenagers are really going through it, because it's really hard to let go and let people become a person when they've actually been your child for so long.
Yeah, I saw some of my parents' friends the other day, and they were telling me about their teenage children, and they were saying things like, their daughter's just turned 18 and is going clubbing, and her boyfriend left her in the middle of town on her own because they had a fight, and went home and just left her. And they were like they were just like, just that one scenario, having to navigate that, like as a parent, let alone everything else. I'm like, because you can't get involved, can you? You can't get too involved.
Yeah, well, I always say this, at some point you have to trust. It really is blind faith that they will make whatever decisions they make and it will turn out okay. And if it doesn't, you will be able to get through it. That's my motto with all of it, because you can't control kids and you can't control young adults, and you can't predict what's going to happen to them, as is evidenced by your story.
Oh, yeah. I have two separate things to say to that one. I remember my mom said, like, you can worry about all the different scenarios of what's going to happen to your child when they're out and about in the world, but not at any point was my mom worried that I was that I was standing in the bus stop that we'd got. Me and Becky got the bus to school every single day for 5 years, standing at that bus stop that we'd lived by. She was never in a million years scared that I was going to get hit by a car whilst at a bus stop. Like, being worried about things doesn't stop them from happening.
No, exactly that. Yeah. Yeah. And we all worry about, we'll worry about things that actually never do happen, isn't it?
Mm.
There's some statistic like 81% of things we worry about never happen. So that's a lot of wasted energy.
But also, like what you're saying, so I know you're thinking about parents and kids, but I can apply that to what you're saying to say, okay, so now I'm worst case scenario in my brain all the time because the worst case scenario happened. So I often think that something bad, like if it's something bad, like a parent, I can imagine that if you can't get in touch with someone, I'm like half scared they're dead. Like my boyfriend comes home from the pub at like 12 o'clock at night drunk, and I'm like, he's going to fall down the stairs. And, like, and I've had to lie in bed and make peace with the fact that, again, like if something was going to happen, it's going to happen. You can't just not even to anything in life. You can't worry about, like, I have to just have like faith that,
Yeah. Yeah, you can't prevent things from happening. You can take precautions and you can be sensible, but
you can't control everything.
That mother can't stop that girl's boyfriend from leaving her in town after a row. Stuff happens.
I mean, how would you react to that?
Oh, I'd be quite angry with him.
Yeah.
and I would probably say something, and my daughter would then get angry with me for trying to control her life and remonstrating and telling her she should have done something different and telling her to ditch him. And it would just not serve any of us when all she really wanted to do was vent about how she'd been let down. And that's the hardest thing for parents, is if your kids are going to share something difficult with you, you have to be able to just listen to how it feels for them and not act on how it feels for you.
Yeah.
And as a parent, you feel all your children's feelings as well as your own. And it's really tough. Well, can I ask you, is it okay to ask how you've been left in terms of injuries from this horror? I want to call it an accident, but I really don't want to, because it's not an accident, is it?
No.
We'll talk about that in a second. But how have you been left physically as a result of it?
So I had a brachycephalic hemorrhage, brain bleed, brain bruise. I broke 6 or 7 bones in my neck, broke my left humerus, my left arm, my right hip was shattered, my sacrum was broken, which is your tailbone, my left leg, the top bone and the bottom bone, so the femur and the tib fib were both broken. My sciatic nerve was severed in my left side, so I can't move or feel my left foot. I require a wheelchair, can't walk distances, never will be able to. And I used to be athletic, I used to run, I can't ever run again. I use crutches all of the time. I have a shower chair rather than being able to stand in the shower because I can't use my one foot, so I can't stand safely. And then 5 years after it happened, because I'd just got on with it and not dealt with any of the pain that, I woke up from a coma, learned what had happened, and I was like, well, I don't know how to feel all that, so I'm going to just ignore it, or not ignore it, just carry on.
Squash it.
Yeah. And then I met with a neuropsychiatrist that said, I'm boxing my emotions, and if I don't face what's happened, there's going to be catastrophic consequences. And I thought to myself, well, that's all well and good, but how do I sit down and let myself feel it? Because I'd focused so much on my physical recovery. And then 5 years later, I developed psychosis and thought that I had been killed in the crash and was living in hell. And that is when I first really understood mental health problems. I'd woken up from hospital, and one of the healthcare assistants turned to me and joked, what if none of this is real and it's all in your head?
Okay, helpful.
And well, no, I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, that's such a, you don't say that to someone who just woke up from a month on coma and both their friends been killed. Like, you don't. That's just. Well, so it planted
No.
a seed. So it planted a seed, and
Yeah.
then eventually, like, I thought, yeah, okay. If you hit someone at 30 miles an hour, there's like an 80 or 90% chance. No, I can't remember this. Do you remember that statistic? I can't remember the statistics. There's like an 80 or 90% chance you'll kill someone if you hit them at the
Yeah.
40 miles an hour.
No, it is 30, and then the opposite is true if you hit them at 20. I remember it was a road safety ad when I was growing up.
So what I said to myself in all of the years afterwards, repeatedly, whenever I'd tell someone, whenever people ask me all the time, I've got a foot splint, a crutch, and a wheelchair. So people always say, "What have you done?" Which is, and I just repeatedly say to myself, no one survives that speed as a pedestrian. No one survives that speed. So I therefore didn't. And that was when I developed psychosis and finally had a real taste of what real mental health, really severe mental health problems is, where I got put in hospital so I couldn't function.
Thank you for sharing that. Is it almost like a dissociation? Because it makes sense to me, actually, that you would, if you're so focused on recovering your body, that you effectively abandon your emotional recovery, because it's, but that makes sense, because it's, how do you recover from something like that? Surely it must feel easier to box it up and put it away.
If I could do all of it again, I would do it exactly the same.
Right.
So I didn't. So I became really mentally ill, and then was put in hospital against my will, but not against my will. So sectioned. After that, and getting mentally ill and getting put in hospital and having to just like surrender to it, and like the police took me into their van and stuff. They put me in a police cell while they couldn't find they were awake in a hospital bed.
Oh God, that feels so hard.
I don't remember it at all. I was living in a nightmare instead. But so that set me free. So that happened in the start of 2019, and from then I felt I could grieve myself, and that I'd kind of let it all out. And the nightmare that I lived in my head from my illness, where I feel like I experienced actual hell, and for like a few days just didn't open my eyes and was living in this nightmare, and then coming out of it and realizing it wasn't true was it's the most freeing thing that could possibly happen. I'm just really, really grateful for it, for kind of finally coming out, and also not having to. I don't feel like I did. I mean, I know I did like a lot of hard work, but I don't feel like I did a lot of hard work emotionally in terms of I blocked it out for 5 years and then faced it really fast. It was the most horrendous thing I've ever experienced mentally, like the like delusion or hallucination or whatever it is in my head. But it was over, and then now I can move forwards.
And have you worked with a counsellor to figure that out, or was it just as you described, like a light bulb moment coming out of that?
Coming out of it and realising that I hadn't actually done all these horrible things. So I thought I'd like been evil and was getting punished for being. It's really hard. I'm not explained it very well, but
that makes sense.
So coming out of it and finding out that I hadn't actually like killed lots of people.
Yeah, you're not a terrible person.
Yeah, was the biggest relief in the world. I don't know. And then like a year later, I developed the same illness, but from being too excited and happy about life. Because I just, it's really hard not to rejoice that you're alive all the time. Like the fact that I can stand up just brings me joy every single time I stand up. So then I got too excited and then got ill again and got put in hospital again. And then they said, I've developed organic bipolar from the brain injury. Right. And now I know to watch both ends of the spectrum rather than just the downs.
Okay, that's interesting. So yeah, I don't really know very much about bipolar. I'm aware of the lows and the highs. But this is something that does it take up a lot of your headspace managing? Are you just constantly aware of how you're feeling?
Yeah, I'm just constantly assessing how I feel. I'm like low level manic all the time, which I really, really like. My mum says people would pay good money to feel how I feel. Like, like,
That sounds like you're happy most of the time.
no, I am. Like post mental illness, even though the struggles and the hospitalizations and the thoughts I had, and I've had lots of like paranoia, lots of really, really horrible thoughts. I like went to A&E 3 times, like begging them to put me in hospital again because I couldn't cope with it. But like but that's now I know what it is. And even while it's happening, I'm still really excited that I'm alive. Like I have been the whole time. It's since the crash. It's really I suppose it's partly I've just channeled myself to be like that.
Well, I mean, hats off to you. I can't begin to imagine the work that you've had to do. You say it hasn't felt like work, but you must be having to work daily it sounds like you are, to just be, to be like that. And you could so easily have gone the other way and been completely depressed, because actually when you were saying your mum sort of supported you to be really resilient about it, part of me wanted to ask, but it's not fair. Do you not ever have those days when you can be really angry? Or did you go through a phase of being really angry? Because it just isn't fair.
Okay, so when you said when I said it doesn't feel like work, it feels like I don't have a choice. Like I just have to focus on the positive because the alternative would be to have woken up from coma, not been able to move a single part of my body. Like I've had like 70 hours of surgery so far. I may need more in the future. And just woke up and said, this isn't fair. I don't want to deal with this. Why should I have to deal with it?
Mm.
But I knew instinctively that the only person that could make it better was me. And I could lie there for as long as I wanted and say, it's not fair. I don't want to have to do this. But then I'm ruining my own life.
That really speaks to me. Yeah, absolutely. And I think people listening may be able to relate.
Like it wasn't a choice, because it's a choice I choose every single second of the day. I choose to cope with it. And that's the kind of message that I kind of want to put out when I talk about things in general, is that like it's the worst thing I could have ever possibly experienced physically in my entire life. And then 5 years later, the mental illness was the worst thing I could ever have possibly experienced mentally. And I just kind of want to set the tone and show people like that you can cope with stuff. You can cope with whatever happens. You can cope. That's kind of just what I want to.
Yeah. We can do hard things.
Yeah, we can do the hard things. You can you don't have to, but not doing them is worse.
Yeah. It's really profound. I was listening to somebody the other day saying he got through a difficult thing for himself by taking the attitude of, I could complain and I could wallow and I could be depressed, but it's easier to play. This is the hand I've been dealt. It's easier to play that.
Well, yeah, like no one was going to do all the physical hard work for me except,
Well, no one can take it away from you.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what you've got on your plate.
And my mum had to come see me every single day and just kind of support me as much as she could, but she couldn't do it for me. And
No.
She couldn't make it better. And like, all you can do when someone's going through something horrific is support them and just, champion. It's difficult, isn't it? I don't know how I just kind of say like, you can do this. Because we can, we're extremely resilient creatures that are designed to. Well, I know that mine was hopefully a rare occasion, but I've dealt with it. Like you can deal with whatever comes at you.
Yeah. Well, you're living proof that we can do the hardest of things.
Yeah.
I think what you said earlier is, it might be the title. Might be the title of this podcast episode. It's like the only person that can help you is yourself, and actually, the sooner people can realise that, the better. As a parent of a teenager going through something difficult, or a young adult, or anyone going through something difficult, you just touched on it. I think the only thing we can do is have empathy, acknowledge that it's difficult, and cheerlead.
And so it's the whole. Okay, so my sister is mentally and physically disabled and will always live with my parents. And me and my mum talk about her quite a lot, the situation, because she's very difficult. And we've kind of like spoke about it's disabling to do everything for her. Like you need, like she needs to. I don't know where I was going with that. Like you can't, like, so if your child's having a hard time, you can't, even though when I was at school, mum would want to go and talk to the teachers about it. You getting involved and trying to put a cushion around them stops them from being able to be like, oh, I can do this myself. I can do it. That you can't always be there for them, and trying to do everything for them to kind of like, or trying to do as much as you can to make their life better, or give them lots of money so that they don't struggle, like will mean they don't know how to learn the skill to earn it, that, or everything. You can't, like, the more you do, the more you stop them from being able to be like their own person.
That's a really important point. Yeah.
You can help a little bit, like, by all means, but you can't, you can't just give them a living wage and let them not work the rest of their life. How is that going to serve them? That sort of thing.
Exactly. How does it serve them? Parents have to do hard things as well in those circumstances. Some people call it tough love, don't they? But you're not going to learn to live this new life you've got if somebody lives it for you.
Very poignant.
Yeah. So tell us about, what made you decide to go into counselling? Tell us a bit about your counselling course, and then we can move on to your book as well, if that's okay.
Yeah. Counselling was because I very quickly got fed up the word of having to tell my story to every new person that I meet over and over and over again, and was like, I would rather like sit and listen and support people through their traumas. I started to do it. When I was living on my own, I used to go to the pub and just sit in the pub and just let people talk to me and just tell me like some really quite traumatic things, because people don't have someone to listen to them.
Right.
People don't. I go out in the world, and so I did a degree in philosophy. I finished it the day before I got hit by a car. It's helped me because it helps to be deep and look and analyze things. And I like to ask questions, but from what I've found so far of the world, I suppose it depends who you meet, but people are so like absorbed in their own stuff and their own problems that they don't really like think about you or how things are going, or like think to ask. So I'll ask lots of questions and people don't tend to ask them back. And I quite like that. I want to talk to people about their stuff, because I've worked through my trauma. I'm all right,
Right.
But it's like, it's important I couldn't do it before I'd worked through it, and then it just helping someone or supporting someone while they're going through something that they're struggling with is beautiful. It feels really nice.
Yeah, it's quite rewarding, I imagine, to know that what you've been through can help another person just simply by the way you're able to be with that person.
Yeah, that's why I'm really grateful for particular mental illness, for giving me the understanding. Because before I used to think, if you're like depressed, can you not just like do some exercise and make yourself feel better? I couldn't relate to it at all. And then I had this massive explosion of really bad mental health. It's like the most severe thing I could ever possibly experience. And now when people tell me they're going through something quite intense, I can immediately know where they are and get it. And that really, really helps. So I want to continue using that skill, which is why I'm training to be a counsellor.
Yeah. Yeah. You just said, you've done all your own work. It's one of the requirements of my counselling course that I have weekly therapy. And I can completely see how doing your own work is important to being able to show up in the world for the people that you care about, not just as a counsellor with clients, but as an individual. It benefits all your relationships.
Yep. There's no
There's
downside.
there's I remember at the beginning of the course saying, I'm not sure if I'll be able to be a counsellor, because I get really tearful when people tell me about the hard things they're going through. And my tutor said, that's because you haven't done your own work. And that's why you go to therapy every week as part of
Wow.
this course. And then about a year later, I was able to start seeing clients and go, God, that's really hard and really traumatic. And I do feel so sad for you, but I don't feel remotely like crying. I went back to my tutor and said, it's true, I've done my own work and now I can handle sad things that aren't mine.
That's wonderful, and it's important because you can feel the difference of when you tell someone something that you're struggling with, and someone replies with, "Oh no, oh, are you okay?" And then you're like, "Am I? Am I okay?"
Yes.
Whereas if someone's like, "Okay," so people would tell me something really traumatic, like when I was out and about, and I was just because obviously my story is so heavy, and I'd be like, "Okay, do you want to talk about it?" And that is that's the response you need.
Yeah. Yeah. To be able to show up and hear and see people.
And like because you're applying this to kids and their parents, like, if a kid turns to their parent and says something really, like, something that's really horrible that they're going through, and the parent replies, "Oh no, like, are you okay?" Like, again, it's you got to be like, "Nope, you can do this." Like my parent, like you can
Yeah.
hear it, but don't like.
Yeah. What are you going to do? What do you want to do? Explore options with them
Yeah,
rather than tell them what you want them to do.
yeah, it's important.
Yeah. And you're writing a book about your experiences.
Yes.
Tell me, how far are you in?
I've wrote quite a lot of it, but it's hard to do on your own. So I've been working with a lady to help me get the chapters ready to send to an agent, because I could do it on my own, but I don't know if I have it in me to do all the marketing and all the different. But I'm going to call it Thrown, because I was, thanks to this lady's suggestion, because we were thrown 50 meters into the park, which was like what the emergency services said that was so visceral for them, was the distance that we'd thrown. And also my life was thrown off course, and there's a thing in pottery, it's like throwing pottery is how you like make shapes. I think it's quite poetic. I just coping with life when you're thrown off the course that you think that you should be on, I think is really hard. Like, because we all think our life should be a certain way up to a point, and when things happen that are out of your control, it can completely like throw you. So
Yeah, really good title. When do you think it might be out? I know you said you've not got an agent yet. How long do you think? I don't know how long these things take. I'd love to read it.
Thank you. I'd love to read it.
Yeah.
I started it when I came out of hospital in 2019. So I'm letting myself do it slowly. I've wrote all lots of different things down, but like, then I've wrote like 100,000 words, but that's not formed into a book. I don't know. I'm trying to get an agent this year. If I can't get one, I will eventually write it myself and just put it out there into the world.
Oh, well, come back and tell us when it's in a purchasable format so that I can add the link.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a huge task. The lady that I'm working with, she's like an editor in several different roles, and I said to her, "Oh, would you ever write a book?" And she said, "No, it's far too much hard work. Like, it's a momentous task." I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine's just written a book, and it does feel, the conversations we've had about it does feel like she's birthed it, because it took so long to come to fruition.
Yeah, that's exactly how I imagine it would feel. Yeah.
Harriet, thank you so much for talking to me today. Is there anything else you would like to say to anyone that might be listening?
Thank you for having me. It's been really nice. So your focus is on mental health for children and young adults?
Yeah.
The one thing I suppose I'd end on is saying, if you're struggling with something, don't keep it inside and talk to someone about it, because it's the whole, like, I kept all of this, like, the ill thoughts I had inside me, and then it ended up in me nearly dying again because because I wasn't in a safe place. And it's when you're feeling particularly low, it feels like the most momentous task to actually say it to someone else. It feels like but that's just the most important thing, is just to talk about it, the power of talking.
Yeah, really good point. Thank you. I don't need to say any more.
Thank you. No, it's been wonderful.
Thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. Thank you too to everyone who's already rated and reviewed the podcast. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Amazon, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a review. It really helps get the word out, as well as making me very happy to read what you have to say. If this episode strikes a chord for you, please share it with anyone else you know who might be in the same boat, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. If you have a story or a suggestion for something you'd like to see covered on the podcast, you can email me at teenagekickspodcast@gmail.com or message me on Instagram. I am Helen Wills. I love hearing from all my listeners. It really makes a difference to me on this journey. See you next week when I'll be chatting to another brilliant guest about the highs and lows of parenting teens. Bye for now.